Governments really love to claim that they are working for your financial freedom. They talk about stability, growth, and opportunities. But when you scratch the surface of history a bit, a darker truth emerges. For centuries, while governments have managed ordinary people in a way that leaves them with mere pennies in their pockets, they have used various financial tricks to concentrate wealth and power for themselves. And do you know what the most surprising part is? These tricks aren't new at all. The same games are staged again and again throughout the centuries. They get dressed up and packaged a bit, given new names, but the goal is always the same: to move wealth upward and keep the majority dependent. Let's start with the oldest and simplest trick: inflation. When a government needs to spend more money than it collects in taxes, it has two options. Either it openly raises taxes, which is politically very risky, or it silently lowers the value of money. That is, it reduces the purchasing power of every coin and banknote in circulation. This is the summary of inflation. Ancient Rome was the master of this craft. In the 3rd century AD, emperors began reducing the silver content in the denarius to cover rising military expenses. Money that was once almost pure silver eventually became copper coins coated in silver. They acted as if everything was fine, but the public holding that money paid a heavy price. Inflation soared, people's savings melted away, and wages couldn't keep up. It was a silent, invisible tax. Today, central banks do the same job instead of imperial mints. In the Middle Ages, there was another version: forced loans. Kings in England, France, and Spain pressured wealthy merchants and guilds to lend to the crown. Of course, this wasn't voluntary. If you refused, there were penalties, confiscation of property, or worse. They would promise to pay it back with interest, but often they paid late, paid with devalued currency, or didn't pay at all. In short, while monarchs continued their wars and flamboyant lives, they forcibly took capital from the hands of merchants. It was outright bullying carried out under the guise of patriotic duty. And it worked. Then we come to the 17th century. This time, the financial system itself turns into a trick. When England established the Bank of England in 1694, the goal wasn't the public good. They needed money to fight France. Wealthy investors bought government bonds, and in return the government guaranteed them interest payments funded by taxes. It might sound like a fair deal, but who paid those taxes? Ordinary people through taxes placed on basic goods ranging from salt to beer. The rich lent to the state and earned interest. The poor paid more taxes to pay that interest. It was a wealth transfer dressed up as national finance. And the foundation of a model that remains valid even today was laid back then. Coming rapidly to the present day, we see that the tricks are not lacking. For instance, deficit financing, meaning governments borrowing massively. Governments accumulate huge debts and issue bonds. Politicians say this is for infrastructure, jobs, and social programs. But the bulk of the money goes to defense contractors, corporate subsidies, and bailouts. When repayment time comes, instead of cutting the spending at the top, they raise taxes, drive up inflation, or cut social benefits. So the debt is sold to the public as for you, but the burden remains on the public. Let's get to the bailouts. Remember the 2008 crisis. Banks took dangerous risks, turned toxic mortgages into securities, and crashed the system. Who paid the bill? Taxpayers, thanks to massive government bailout packages. Then who recovered and grew stronger? The same banks. The formula was simple. Profits were privatized, losses were nationalized, and the public was told this was to save the system. Even the management of pensions is actually a sleight of hand. In the US, UK, and Europe, people contributed for years so their money would be ready when they retired. But governments often didn't save that money, they spent it immediately. They left behind only IOUs. It was thought that future taxpayers will pay. This is like an intergenerational Ponzi scheme dressed up in official language. When the population ages, things become unsustainable. Then the government says, we are making reforms. Benefits are cut, the retirement age is raised, and the value of payments is eroded by inflation. At every stage, the trick works through perception. Inflation is sold as growth, forced loans as duty, national debt as investment, bailouts as stability, and pension cuts as reform. But the common point of all of them is that wealth flows to the minority. In the modern world, things have become even more complicated. Quantitative easing, which most people hadn't even heard of before 2008, is an example of this. Central banks created trillions of dollars and bought government bonds and mortgage-backed securities to prop up the markets. Policymakers told the public this was necessary to prevent a collapse. In a way, it worked. But for whom? For the rich. Because asset prices skyrocketed. Stocks, real estate, bonds, they all gained value. While returns for the average citizen were very limited, the cost came in the form of a rising cost of living. Hidden taxation is another version of this. Instead of raising income tax, governments silently collect taxes through sales taxes, fuel taxes, and of course inflation. When prices rise faster than wages, the difference is a hidden tax. Inflation is attractive to governments because it lowers the real value of debts, but it destroys the citizens' purchasing power. There is also regulatory capture. Regulations ostensibly protect the public, but powerful corporations often bring these institutions under their influence. Railways in the 19th century, oil companies in the 20th century, and today, technology and finance giants. They all had rules written to suit their own interests. In other words, it is easier to buy the referee than to play the game. While the public thinks we are being protected, insiders make a profit. War finance is also the same old trick sold in new clothes. In WWI and WE2, governments issued massive bonds. They sold these to citizens, calling it a patriotic duty. People thought they were supporting the country, but for wealthy investors, these bonds were risk-free investments based on future tax revenues. The same thing happened in the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. Trillions of dollars were borrowed, defense companies won, and the public paid the bill. Meanwhile, governments use complexity as a weapon. Thousands of pages of tax laws, incomprehensible financial instruments, hidden items in budgets. All of this makes it impossible for the ordinary citizen to understand where the money is going. Complexity is a camouflage. You cannot resist transfers. You cannot track. Why is this important now? Because these tricks are still here, and moreover they are accelerating. Inflation is eroding your savings. The debt burden is growing. Bailouts have become an automatic reflex when markets shake. While central banks continue to manipulate the money supply, costs are again loaded onto the public. The system strengthens the financial elite while making you work harder to buy less. The lesson from history is this: these tricks always come back. Debased coins in Rome impoverished the people. Forced loans in the Middle Ages crushed merchants. Today's debt and inflation policies are straining households. Eras change, the mechanism remains the same. And the truth is, most people will not escape these tricks because they aren't even aware the game is being played. They think inflation is natural, Taxes are unavoidable, and bailouts are mercy. Without learning economic history, they simply believe the government's messages. This ignorance is the most powerful of the tricks. If people don't know the past, they cannot see today's games either. Financial education is an act of resistance. Economic history is a weapon. If you know the tricks, it becomes harder for you to be manipulated. So, what should you understand from this? Always look beyond the headlines. When governments announce stimulus, look at who profits first. Remember that when inflation rises, it is not just bad luck, but the result of a policy. When new regulations come, question who wrote those rules and who benefits from them. Protect your wealth outside the traps. Turn towards assets where money does not lose value. And don't forget, the system doesn't work for you just because it says so. The system protects itself, not you. History doesn't repeat itself exactly, but if you don't understand it, it will crush you all the same. The tricks that impoverished people in Rome are the same as the modern tricks draining your bank accounts today. The only difference is whether you notice them in time or not.